Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on. And as it is the 18th of June, we are going to be watching Disclosure from 1994, directed by Barry Livingston and starring Michael Douglas. So at the time, again, we're going to go back in the Wayback Machine, and at the time of the release of this movie, it was definitely the cast that basically caught everyone's attention and the subject matter of that particular story as well, dealing with not only a Michael Crichton picture, but having the leads of Michael Douglas and Demi Moore working together in a very put forward as a very sexy sort of story being told in theaters. But I did not get to see this movie till much later on, probably on some sort of rental weekend or something like that. But I had seen it a few times, but it has been a while since I have seen it since then until now for this project. And like I already mentioned, not only does this movie star Michael Douglas and Demi Moore, but it also stars Donald Sutherland, Caroline Goodall, Roma Mafia, Dylan Baker, and Rosemary Forsyth. So Tom Sanders, played by Michael Douglas, is a senior executive at a cutting-edge technology corporation on the verge of releasing an innovative new product. Sanders' boss, Bob Galvin, played by Donald Sutherland, is putting the final touches on a potentially lucrative merger, and everything is in order for Tom until a vamp from his past, which is Meredith Johnson, played by Demi Moore, swoops in, stealing his impending promotion, and then, doubling down, suing him for sexual harassment. Now again, this movie does play out like a Michael Crichton story does. The translation from book to movie, I am not 100% sure how accurate it is, but it does feel like prior stories of such that have become the Michael Crichton movies that they were originally books from. We have a strong mid-90s Michael Douglas performance, and we have a very stunningly gorgeous Demi Moore doing a fantastic job, as she always does. It's a little unusual how Kismet works out with this particular list of movies, how we have back-to-back Donald Sutherland roles, which is kind of interesting to always see. But again, he plays a fantastic older statesman in the company, realizing that he's playing more for his company than for his individual employees. But again, we're dealing with a weird sort of way to tell a story about sexual harassment, where both sides are blaming the other side for the harassment itself. It's an interesting way that it gets dealt with, but it turns out to be a subversive sort of storyline to get to the subterfuge going on with this whole entire merger and trying to get power over another. So during the preliminary sort of pre-trial about the sexual harassment, Tom is able to come up with an audio representation of what had actually happened, where prior to that it was a he said, she said sort of situation. And when the tape is played, or the company decides to give in, agrees to help him on by having him keep his job. And that all happens on June 18th, 1992, which is about an hour and 30 minutes into this 2 hour and 9 minute film. All right, so on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off to the future to see what we're going to be watching for tomorrow, and that is going to be the 19th of June, and that is going to be Total Recall from 1990. So until next time, go see a movie. And as it is the 19th of June, we are going to be watching Total Recall from 1990, directed by Paul Verhoeven and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we're dealing with one of those movies from one of those eras that everyone went to see, and this is definitely one that everyone went to see when it first came out. Not only do we have a fantastical story to begin with, but we are dealing with a huge box office action star in Arnold Schwarzenegger, and also having Paul Verhoeven doing a Philip K. Dick story in this huge bombastic, like late 80s, early 90s sort of sci-fi spectacular. So it was kind of impossible not to have seen this. Also, it's a movie that I see watch constantly throughout the years. But however, it has been a little while since the last time I'd actually seen this movie, so it was a great rewatch. And like I already mentioned, not only does this movie star Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it also stars Sharon Stone, Ronnie Cox, Michael Ironside, Rachel Ticotin, Marshall Bell, Mel Johnson Jr., and Roy Brocksmith. So Douglas Quaid, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, is a bored construction worker in the year 2084 who dreams of visiting the colonized Mars. He visits a company called Recall that plants false memories into people's brains in order to experience the thrill of Mars without actually having to travel there. But something goes wrong during the procedure. Quaid discovers that his entire life is actually a false memory, and that the people who implanted it in him now want him dead. Now, several years later, there was a remake of this, but technically more of a more loyal version of the original Philip K. Dick story. But it's nothing compared to the Technicolor fever dream that this movie is. This is a quintessential Schwarzenegger at probably his zenith. He basically, every line is pretty much quotable. The visuals are so stunning. The special effects are like top notch. Not only do we deal with miniature work, blue screen work, we also deal with puppetry and fantastic animatronics. Probably at the time, probably the most realistic looking versions, especially when you're dealing with a facial structure of Arnold Schwarzenegger, where you don't have the ability to 3D scan a face and create a computer generated version of these faces. No, you actually have physical on set, and that's the other thing too. There's a lot of really cool practical effects. There's some really cool squib work. There's some really good gun violence, and I'd have to look this up, but the budget for shattering glass has probably got to be the biggest one in the era, because every single second scene has someone either smashing through a window or having a window exploded or something, and just like raining down shards of broken glass. The movie is such a fun ride. We have Michael Ironside being a fantastic heel, and Ronnie Cox as the head bad guy is just doing the perfectness of the role. Schwarzenegger playing up this should-be normal average guy as, you know, built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So when you go into that sort of situation, you push that aside like, yeah, okay, Schwarzenegger's the average-looking kind of guy and all that. But it's such a fun ride. Early Sharon Stone doing fantastic work as well, and it is just such a treat to watch. It's one of those movies where you don't really have to pay attention, but you can't sort of not look away. It's just so fantastical. One of my biggest questions that I have with this movie, though, is I wonder if the Toronto Blue Jays actually do win the 5th game of the World Series against the Tokyo Samurais. And after realizing that the answers to what has happened to him lies on Mars, Quaid actually arrives on Mars on June 19th, 2084, which is about 43 minutes into this 1 hour and 53-minute movie. And as it is the 20th of June, we are going to be watching Marty from 1955. Directed by Durbert Mann and starring Ernest Borgnine. So to begin with, this is one of those movies that I have seen before, I think a couple of times since my original viewing, but I believe this was one of those Saturday night at the movies on TVO, which is where I've seen a lot of classic movies. And the main reason I remember this is because I'm pretty sure I remember seeing an interview with Ernest Borgnine talking about the making of the movie, which was part of the program to deep dive into the actors and directors and writers and historians about the movie that they were watching on Saturday night at the movies. It has been quite a while since I had seen this movie, and like I had mentioned, not only does this movie star Ernest Borgnine, but it also stars Betsy Blair, Joe Mantell, Esther Mancotti, Augustus Cioli, Karen Steele, and Jerry Paris. So the story follows the life of Marty Paletti, who is played by Ernest Borgnine, a stout bachelor butcher who lives with his mother, played by Esther Mancotti, in the Bronx. Always unlucky in love, Marty reluctantly goes to a ballroom one night and meets a nice teacher named Clara, played by Betsy Blair. Though Marty and Clara hit it off, his relatives discourage him from pursuing the relationship, and he must decide between his family's approval or a shot at finding real love. So this is one of the defining roles that Ernest Borgnine has in his lexicon of movies that span like decades. This is a very, obviously, we're forward strong with Marty being the main character, surrounded by some really great supporting cast. We deal with a wonderful glimpse into this basically small window of existence, which is an unusual time if you haven't been around that time. We're dealing with the mid-50s where the story takes place, and it's a very interesting look at a lifestyle that is definitely not the norm. When the world was actually physically social, where you would actually go out in droves and people would like culminate in like bars and dance halls like we do in the story, or just people just out on the street at all hours of the night. And it's an interesting look into a bygone era. The black and white aspect of the movie adds to it feeling more like a television play almost, the way it is shot, the way everything is framed. And it's a very quaint movie, and it's a very interesting way to tell a romantic story. And as Marty and Clara realize that they have a lot in common, Marty tells Clara about his fears and dreams. And just after midnight on June 20th, 1954, they start walking back to Marty's house. And that happens about 47 minutes into this 1 hour and 30-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that season, it ended up winning for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Ernest Borgnine, Best Adapted Screenplay. It also ended up getting nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Juror Mantell, Best Supporting Actress for Betsy Blair, Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Black and White, and Best Black and White Cinematography. And as it is June 21st, we are going to be watching Mississippi Burning from 1998, directed by Alan Parker and starring Gene Hackman. So to begin with, I have seen this movie prior to this, but I believe I've only seen it once before. The reason I saw it again was probably in one of those group rental times down at the video store that was beneath our apartment building. And again, it was something that everyone knew about just because of the actors and whatnot, a stacked cast. But again, after the one initial watch was pretty much enough for me, and like I said, this is probably the second time that I have seen this since then for this project. And like I'd already mentioned, not only does this movie star Gene Hackman, but it also stars Willem Dafoe, Brad Dourif, Frances McDormand, Gillard Starton, Robert Lee Ermey, and Stephen Tobolowsky. When a group of civil rights workers go missing in a small Mississippi town, FBI agents Alan Ward, played by Willem Dafoe, and Rupert Anderson, played by Gene Hackman, are sent to investigate. Local authorities refuse to cooperate with them, and the African American community is afraid to, precipitating to a clash between the two agents over their strategy. As the situation becomes more volatile, the direct approach is abandoned in favor of a more aggressive, hard-tone tactics. So with our fantastic leads of Gene Hackman and Willem Dafoe, also including Frances McDormand, we have a wonderful secondary cast. I mean, I guess Fred Dourif could definitely be included as like one of the leads of this movie, but he also fits into what is a fantastic gathering of character actors for this movie. Now, most of the names that I've already listed off are perfect examples of that. But other names that aren't in that list include Michael Rooker, Pruitt Taylor Vince, and added late into the name are FBI agents played by Kevin Dunn and Tobin Bell. And this movie being shot in the late 90s is a perfect example of how dramas were done at the time. Wonderful stacked cast, a great script, fantastic performances by all people involved. But it's just because of the subject matter. It's just a difficult movie to watch just because of that. The racial conflict is palpable upon witnessing what happens. We follow into the story through these white agents that are coming into this racial climate that they are not, well, one is not used to, and one definitely knows how it's played out, but it's just a fantastic tribute to how well everyone does it. I mean, the African-American cast is just so spectacular. The white cast is just so deviously bad, but still just so good at it, that actors that you know are these fantastic people, and to be filled with such a hatred for these bad guys is just a perfect example of how well this movie is put together. So it's when three civil rights activists are released from jail and then are abducted by the Klan and vanish. That happens on the 21st of June, 1964, which is about 3 minutes into this 2-hour and 8-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Cinematography, and it also got nominations for Best Actor for Gene Hackman, Best Supporting Actress for Frances McDermott, Best Director, Best Film Editing, Best Picture, and Best Sound. And then on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off into the future to see what movie we're going to be watching for tomorrow, which is the 22nd of June, and that is going to be Heavenly Creatures from 1994. So until next time, go see a movie. And as it is the 22nd of June, we are watching Heavenly Creatures from 1994, directed by Peter Jackson and starring Melanie Lynskey. Now, this is one of the movies on the basically big lexicon of Peter Jackson movies that I have yet to have seen before this. So obviously, this would be my first viewing, but it's always one that I've been interested in watching because of both the movies that precede this and come after are definitely movies that I have watched of his and enjoyed. It's just never gotten around to doing this, and thankfully this is what this project brings me. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Melanie Lynskey, but it also stars Kate Winslet, Sarah Parise, Diana Kent, Clive Merrison, Simon O'Connor, Peter Elliott, and Gilbert Goldie. So when wealthy and precocious teenager Juliet, played by Kate Winslet, transfers from England to Christchurch, New Zealand with her family, and forms a bond with the quiet, brooding Pauline, played by Melanie Lynskey. And through their shared love of handsome big screen tenor Mario Lanza and games of make-believe. But when their parents begin to suspect that their increasing intense friendship is becoming unhealthy, the girls decide to run away to America, hatching a dark plan for those who threaten to keep them apart. So again, it was a long time coming in me watching this movie, and I couldn't be more pleasantly surprised to see this. Now, we definitely are dealing with a very non-traditional story to begin with. A group of a pair of girls coming together and having a wild imagination build between the two of them, and also a physical relationship building between them, especially at a time in the 50s when that was highly frowned upon, especially in New Zealand. But visually, this movie is so great. The real world, as I put in quotes, real world, is wonderfully represented through Jackson's way of filming. But when we are entered into the surreal world that these girls have created between the two of them, we have a gorgeous hint into the future of what we will see from Peter Jackson when it comes to the visuals. There are characters that in storytelling they create like plasticine versions of it, but when the two girls enter into that realm, the characters come to life, and the costumes to represent these people that are like no more than plasticine but become animated, the costuming looks so gorgeous. The look of the outfits and the texture of them just like totally read handmade by a child sort of thing, because these girls are like early teens to begin with. Now, obviously, knowing where Kate Winslet's career goes past this, there's no doubt that she does a fabulous job. But also, Melanie Lynskey, who, again, later on becomes a known name, but at the time, this is basically, Melanie's first acting experience. And while Kate had done acting before, but mostly television. So this is both of these young women's very first theatrical performances, and they do a fantastic job. And they are given so much to run on the range of emotions, and they play it off beautifully. So, but as I had mentioned, it has a dark story to begin with, and this movie comes to that point where the girls plan to run away together. They perceive Pauline's mother as the main implement, so Pauline cold-bloodedly decides to take action on June 22nd, 1954, which is an hour and 33 minutes into this 1 hour and 39-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up getting nominated for Best Original Screenplay. And as it is the 23rd of June, we are watching The Englishman Who Went Up a Hill and Came Down a Mountain from 1995, directed by Christopher Monger and starring Hugh Grant. So to begin with, I do know of this movie. It's one that you see on several lists of whatnot. I have not actually gotten around to it, so this would have been my first viewing. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Hugh Grant, but it also stars Ian McNeice, Tara Fitzgerald, Cole Meany, Ian Hart, Robert Pugh, Kevin Griffith, and Yeyan Rees. During the days of World War I, a small Welsh town relies on its local mountain as a source of pride. When two English cartographers, Reginald Austin, played by Hugh Grant, and George Grand, played by Ian McNeice, arrive to measure the mountain, they discover the landmark is 16 feet short of achieving the official mountain classification. Disheartened that their mountain has been deemed a hill, the townfolk devise a plan to make up for those 16 feet. Meanwhile, Anson falls for a local woman, played by Tara Fitzgerald. Now, I'm gonna not even pretend to bring across the point that I have all these names that I know how to pronounce and all that sort of thing, which is kind of hard. It's interesting dealing with a Welsh story as a baseline for the actual thing, so you have a lot of those. Have to have the word said several times before you actually realize what it is you're actually saying, but it's a very cute, romantic sort of comedy. It's got a great, very lively cast. The members of the small town that they visit, that the cartographers visit, are just a fantastic thing to see. It's always nice to finally get around to movies that others have enjoyed previously and understanding why they do. Again, Hugh Grant is that charming young gentleman that he is at this era of his career and is just a delight to watch. And again, a lot of the characters, the secondary characters, all these great character actors with such great accents. It's just a delight to watch. And as a point where the cartographers are about to leave and the town folk want them to stick around so that they have some time to build that extra shortage that the actual hill to turn into a mountain can be, there's a very long several days of rain, which also includes June 23rd, 1917, which is about an hour and 7 minutes into this 1 hour and 39-minute movie. And as it is the 24th of June, we are going to be watching Emma from 1996, directed by Douglas McGrath and starring Gwyneth Paltrow. So of all the versions of this particular story, of the Emma story by Jane Austen, it's kind of hard to not be aware of this version. It is one that is talked about over and over again because of the casting of the particular lead actress, again, to begin with, not being central to the area where the movie takes place, but her quite convincing portrayal of convincing everyone that she actually is from that area. But again, a movie that is known very well. Again, several different versions of the movie is out there, but this is the one that pretty much sticks out when you mention the name of Emma. That being said, not only does this movie star Gwyneth Paltrow, but it also stars Jeremy Northam, Toni Collette, Ewan McGregor, James Cosmo, Alan Cumming, Sophie Thompson, and Polly Walker. So pretty socialite Emma Woodhouse, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, entertains herself by playing matchmaker for those around her. Her latest partner is Harriet Smith. played by Toni Collette, who is an unpretentious debutante, while Emma herself receives the attentions of the dashing Frank Churchill, played by Ewan McGregor. However, Emma's attempts at matchmaking cause more problems than solutions, and may ultimately jeopardize her own chance at love and happiness. So, to be personal about this, I'm not a big fan of these styles of movies, of this genre of storytelling. I have watched several in the past, and they just are not my cup of tea to begin with. But that being said, I have to acknowledge when I watch one that is entertaining, and this is a very entertaining telling of this particular story. Now, this would be, I believe, maybe my second time at most, maybe third of seeing this movie. I have seen it in the past, just in mostly a passing sort of viewing and whatnot. Knowing that Alan Cumming, fantastic, one of my favorite actors, as well as Ewan McGregor, cannot deny that gentleman his props, as well as being such entertaining to my personal enjoyment of watching movies. Two of them working fantastically together. And again, we're dealing with Gwyneth Paltrow as our main character. We have to follow through with doing a very notable, believable portrayal of a woman from this era. Toni Collette as well is someone that I didn't realize was who she was probably at the time when I originally saw it. So when I saw her name come up, I'm like, wait, Toni Collette's in this movie? So upon this second or third watching, it's like, okay, that's kind of cool. But again, not my favorite type of movie, but again, I can't acknowledge when it is very well done. Scenery is fantastic. The costumes are spot on. I love all the set design and whatnot that goes into this sort of thing. And the banter between characters is just so entertaining when you have very strong actors doing a very sometimes hard to portray conversation because of the date when the movie's takes place. At one point in the movie, both Emma and Harriet are accosted by gypsies, and they're saved by Frank Churchill. And at a picnic held on the 24th of June, Harriet confesses that she likes her rescuer, which is a sequence that takes place an hour and 26 minutes into this 2 hour and 1 minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Original Score and got nominated for Best Costume Design. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off into the future to see what we're going to be watching for tomorrow, which is going to be the 25th of June, and that is Ragtime from 1981. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.